start the YouTube streaming, and we're ready to go. It's 8 o'clock. Looks like everyone's connected. Okay. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for joining this evening on our ISKCON of New Jersey Towaco Zoom Sangha. And as always, we would like to bring to you a variety of wonderful speakers. And in the past, we've had some excellent speakers, and today is no exception. So I'd like to introduce Radha Bhakti Devi Dasi. Radha Bhakti, speaking for the first time on this forum, but she has spoken many places before. She was raised in the Bhakti tradition in Toronto, Canada, and then moved to New York in 2017 to be with her husband, Hari Prasad Prabhu. Hari Prasad Prabhu is a very good friend of mine. And she is a disciple of His Holiness Chandra Mauli Swami Maharaj. And currently her services include co-facilitation of community group, mentorship, and devotee care at the Bhakti Center and other places. She also serves on the board of the Vedic Roots Montessori Academy, which is Canada's first Krishna conscious school. And professionally, she has a background in marketing and works in organizational effectiveness consulting. And so as a consultant, she's been able to travel, and this has allowed her to go to India, and she has volunteered there at the Bhakti School for Impoverished Children and the Bhakti Hospital. Her volunteer experiences have had a very enriching and profound effect on her sense of purpose. And so it really is a great honor to have her this evening on our forum. And she will be speaking tonight on a very deep and important topic, the art of forgiveness. Thank you very much, Radha Bhakti. I pass it on to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for having me. When Yashoda Dalal Prabhu had reached out and asked me if I wanted to speak, I genuinely didn't realize what I was getting into. When I saw the poster for all of the speakers for the week, I felt incredibly just embarrassed and ashamed even. I have no qualification to be in such esteemed company. So thank you so much for inviting me. This is so much for my practice and purification. So thank you. And thank you for choosing to tolerate me for the next hour or so. So please accept my most humble obeisances, all of you. And before we begin, I'd also like to offer my respects to His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami and His Holiness Radha Swami. In preparation for this talk, I was listening to a couple of their lectures as well. So if anything that I say today inspires you in any way, all credit goes to them. So let's go ahead and jump in with some prayers, and I will share my screen. Okay. Can somebody just confirm if that's come through?
Yeah, looks good.
Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karati Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripata Maham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you again for having me, and sorry about the screen. When Yashoda Dalal Prabhu had asked me what I would want to speak about, I was really kind of reflecting on what is it that I need to learn more about? What is it that I would benefit me to research more of? And I thought about this topic, forgiveness, because I think this is really relevant for me personally and also in all of our lives, and it's so relevant to our bhakti as well. I'll go ahead and start reading this verse. Please follow along on mute. I'm going to read the verse, the word-for-word translation, as well as the translation and purport. And I will make this bigger so that we can all see. Okay. Okay, so this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 15, verse 40. Kshamaya rochate lakshmir brahmi sori yatha prabha shaminam ashu bhagavam stushyate harir ishvara. Kshamaya, simply by forgiving. Rochate, becomes pleasing. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. Brahmi, in connection with Brahminical qualifications. Sori, the sun god. Yatha, as. Prabha, the sunshine. Kshaminam, unto the Brahmins who are so forgiving. Ashu, very soon. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tushyate, becomes pleased. Hari, the Lord. Ishvara, the Supreme Controller. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The duty of a Brahman is to culture the quality of forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is pleased with those who are forgiving. Purport. Different personalities become beautiful by possessing different qualities. Chanakya Pandit says that the cuckoo bird, although very black, is beautiful because of its sweet voice. Similarly, a woman becomes beautiful by her chastity and faithfulness to her husband, and an ugly person becomes beautiful when he becomes a learned scholar. In the same way, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras become beautiful by their qualities. Brahmins are beautiful when they are forgiving, Kshatriyas when they are heroic and never retreat from fighting, Vaishyas when they enrich cultural activities and protect cows, and Shudras when they are faithful in the discharge of duties pleasing to their masters. Thus, everyone becomes beautiful by his special qualities, and the special quality of the Brahman, as described here, is forgiveness. Jai. So, pardon me. So we just read, as you know, from the Srimad Bhagavatam, but actually forgiveness is mentioned in multiple places in the Shastra, including in the Bhagavad Gita in chapters 10 and 16, where Krishna mentions forgiveness to be a divine quality. So why is forgiveness a divine quality? I was reflecting on this a little, and I was thinking, forgiveness is very difficult, and yet it's essential for our spiritual progress. Bhakti Tirtha Swami talks about how forgiveness is essential for the development of our communities and actually for the entire future of our movement. He says that actually the inability to forgive is such a block in our Krishna consciousness. And I was thinking that forgiveness is such an important topic that for those of us who have ever attended a japa retreat within ISKCON, forgiveness is an entire unit in the japa retreats. So it's so important to our relationship with Krishna. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami, once again, he speaks about how the effect of holding one grudge, just one grudge, it can have ripple effects in the world. And he says that if we can let one grudge go, our entire society can benefit. So at this point, I would like it if you could all take a moment and think about a person who has wronged you. Think about a person who has betrayed you or cheated you or treated you poorly. Think of a person that you just can't and maybe you don't even want to forgive. And if you can't think of someone, that means you're not going deep enough. So go deeper into your heart and find that person that you can think of that you feel betrayed or hurt by, and just meditate on that person. In the age of Kali, we're all bound to feel hurt. We're all bound to be abused, to be betrayed, and to be cheated on. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami talks about how hanging on to a grudge can affect our ability to be present in our association, our ability to be our full selves in all of our relationships and services, Of course, it's probably not a surprise that our ability to forgive can affect our physical and spiritual health. And when we don't feel loved, or when we feel forsaken, and when we hold grudges or we feel angry, then we are 10 times more susceptible to chronic diseases like cancer and hepatitis and diabetes. And in fact, something like 80% of all diseases are due to stress. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami, I love the way he speaks about this. He says that when we don't let go, we are allowing whatever you did to me to be happening again and again and again. If we can't let go, we're just consistently allowing that to happen to us. And the interesting thing that happens when we're unable to let go is that we actually become attached to that very thing. It's very easy to become attached to being a victim. Why? Why is that? And maybe some of us can relate to that. I can certainly relate to that. When we're a victim, perhaps it makes us feel superior. Maybe for other people, it's a way of getting attention. If I'm a victim, then that means people will give me their love and their care and their affection. So we can become attached to holding on to this identity of being a victim. Sometimes we're attached to that identity out of fear, because we actually feel a fear of growing out of a particular situation because we've never known anything different. And so this attachment leads to a level of comfort. And this comfort is so dangerous because that's when we begin to really feel fixed in our identity as a victim. And what happens when we identify with being a victim? It just catapults us outside of soul consciousness and binds us further into bodily consciousness. So then what happens? What happens is a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is one of the reasons why sometimes you see people that are getting into one abusive relationship after the next, or you see people who are consistently sabotaging healthy relationships over and over again. And it's because, again, we can find ourselves unconsciously being comfortable in the position of a victim. And again, that it happens on such a subtle level that sometimes we don't even notice when it's happening. So this inability to forgive, it keeps us in the material world, and it even keeps us in this very body. And what I mean by that is I had the wonderful opportunity to witness the service of the palliative care team at the Bhaktivedanta Hospital in Mumbai. And they taught me something that they refer to as their own version of the 6 loving exchanges. And they talk about how when a patient is on his or her deathbed, how it's so important that with their loved ones, with their family, that they have these 6 loving exchanges, which consist of these 6 phrases. I love you. I know you love me too. I forgive you, and I pray that you can forgive me too. We will remember you always and never forget, and we'll be okay after you're gone. You would be amazed how many people couldn't let go. They couldn't leave their bodies until they heard these words. Even people in comas left their bodies after they heard these words from loved ones. So we definitely don't want to leave our bodies before forgiving people and before being forgiven, because it will just bind us here for longer. This is why it's so important to reflect on this topic. Where do we need to forgive? And where do we need to be forgiving? This is not a small topic. It's not a small feel-good topic about forgiveness. This is serious for our progress in our spiritual lives and in our lives in general. And often as devotees, when people use or abuse us, sometimes we're able to rationalize it and say, okay, this was just my karma. But if we don't really delve deeper into it, we are just prone to additional suffering. If we don't kind of work these things out, it will have a negative effect on our spiritual life and, of course, our physical health. In every single ISKCON community, Bhakti Tirtha Swami talks about how there are people who will stop chanting, reading, and serving because they feel deeply wounded and they haven't been able to forgive. And the hard part is sometimes we have to forgive people who never asked for it. And that's another thing that makes it very difficult. So there's so many stories in the Shastra about Lord Krishna being forgiving. And of course, he's so forgiving to us. We can, I'm sure, all think about ways that Lord Krishna has forgiven us in this life, what to speak of our previous lives. And a couple of examples in the Shastra, probably 2 of the most famous are the liberation of Putana, but also the story of Jagai and Madai. So if you don't mind, I'll spend the next few minutes relaying the story of Jagai and Madai as I heard it from His Holiness Radha Swami. So this story begins when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave an order to Haridas Thakur and Lord Nityananda. He said, everyone you meet and everywhere you meet them, give them this one message. Chant the names of Krishna, worship Krishna, become his devotee. He is your mother, your father, the treasure of your life. Don't consider who is fit or unfit. Don't consider a person's caste, education, or their past. Just go to every house and every marketplace, everywhere, and give them this message. So in Navadvip, there were these two brothers, Jagai and Madai, who were coming from a Brahmin family and lineage, but who, due to some terrible association from the beginning of their lives, they became the most feared criminals and demons in the world. And Radha Swami speaks about how they were addicted to every possible sinful activity. They were addicted to alcohol and intoxication. They were murdering Brahmins. They were robbing people's homes. They were setting homes on fire in the middle of the night while people were in them. They killed children and they raped women. I mean, these are the most hideous, heinous crimes, the most hideous personalities. And when Lord Nityananda heard about them, he felt excited. So why? My friend Radhika today, she sent us a quote by Bhakti Swami from Spiritual Warrior. I'm going to read this to you because I think this is applicable here. He says, for genuine spiritual warriors, an apparently insurmountable obstacle is cause for excitement because we wonder what our wonderful Lord will do. The journey becomes an adventure with an unknown outcome. Perhaps he will bring order to chaos, clean up the nonsense, and perform some kind of miracle, making the impossible a reality. Everything is based on our level of devotion and commitment. The real workers for God are almost gleeful when there is a problem that requires the Lord's intervention because they know that the Lord will never let them down. So when Lord Nityananda heard about these two brothers, Jagai and Madai, and the horrible activities that they were engaged in, he became excited because he thought, my Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can deliver even these demons. And if he does that, and when he does that, then his mercy will become known all over the world. And when Radha Swami speaks about this pastime, he speaks about how Lord Balaram carries a plow and he can kill anyone at any moment. But as Nityananda, he approaches even these demons as a beggar. He approaches them with folded hands and he asks Jagai and Madai, please hear my words. Chant the names of Krishna, otherwise you're going to go to hell for all of these horrible sins that you're committing. But if you just take shelter of Lord Chaitanya, you will attain the highest perfection of liberation. And so Jagai and Madai were furious. Their response was to be furious. And they chased Lord Nityananda and Srila Haridas Thakur away. And Maharaj jokes when he tells the story that in the background, Haridas Thakur is speaking to Advaita Acharya saying how much he does not enjoy preaching with Lord Nityananda because he's always getting us into some kind of trouble. So yet another example of being chased by these horrible, frightening, scary demons. So when Mahaprabhu heard this, he immediately called for his chakra, his weapon. But Lord Nityananda said, no, I already decided that you have to save them. And so he went again. After this horrible interaction, Lord Nityananda went again to Jagai and to Madai. And Madai, with absolutely all of his strength, these were big men, with absolutely all of his strength, he picked up a liquor pot and smashed it on the head of Lord Nityananda. And out of Lord Nityananda's sheer mercy, he began to bleed, and he began to bleed to reciprocate with these demons. And the blood was dripping from his head and drenching his clothing. And in that state, Lord Nityananda said to Madai, I don't mind what you did to me, but it really, really breaks my heart to see that you're suffering. Because people who give suffering are suffering themselves. And so he said, please consider my plea and chant the names of Lord Krishna, of Lord Hari. And for Jagai, that did it. His heart was transformed. But Madai, I'm sure out of some kind of ego that, hey, I tried to kill this person and he didn't die. So Madai was furious. And so he picked up another pot ready to throw it at Lord Nityananda, and Jagai was the one that stopped him. And he said, please, can't you see that this man is a saint? Please don't hurt him. Now, by that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had arrived on the scene. And Radhanath Maharaj describes that Mahaprabhu's eyes were bright red, like burning coals. And he saw the scene. He saw that Madai was standing there ready to kill Lord Nityananda. So again, on the spot, Mahaprabhu called for his chakra. He said, chakra. But Lord Nityananda, he stood between Mahaprabhu's chakra and Madai. And he said, please, we've come here not to kill the demons, but to actually transform their hearts. Everybody in the age of Kali will be like these two people. We can't go around killing everyone. So please look at Jagai. Jagai actually saved my life. And so out of immense gratitude that Jagai had apparently saved Lord Nityananda's life, Mahaprabhu on the spot awarded Jagai Krishna Prem. And immediately he fell at Lord Chaitanya's feet and begged for forgiveness. And when Madai, his brother, saw that, Madai changed too, and he also begged for forgiveness. And he said, my Lord, you forgave even Putana. Please forgive me too. This was when they realized who he was. But in response, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, she attacked me, but you attacked my Nitai, and his body is more dear to me than my own, because he is my devotee. So Madai begged Lord Nityananda for forgiveness, and of course, Lord Nityananda granted it. And eventually, after some time, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that he would take on the sins of both Jagai and Madai himself, and he embraced them. And when he embraced them, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's entire body turned black because of all of the sins that he had taken on himself. It's said that Chitragupta Maharaj, who is the person who scribes all of our activities, he had like a whole staff just for Jagai and Madai because they couldn't even keep track of all of the sinful activities of Jagai and Madai. And with one embrace, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took them all up on his own body, and his body turned black. And when the devotees told him that, my Lord, your body has turned black as a result of hugging these two people, Mahaprabhu said that the Nam Sankirtan will remove all of those sins from my body. And so they will leave me and they will enter the heart of anyone who criticizes the devotees. So that's an interesting point for us to meditate on. So it's said that Jagai and Madai received the Lord's mercy because regardless of their heinous crimes, they never offended a devotee except for that one time with Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and Lord Nityananda gave them his forgiveness. But even as a little girl, you know, I was fortunate enough to grow up in this movement, and so I've heard the story many times. But even as a little girl, every time I hear this story, or I heard the story, I would think to myself, I mean, it's so lovely and so nice to hear about the Lord's mercy. And yes, that means that there's hope for the rest of us. But I couldn't help but think about the people who they wronged, who Jagai and Madai wronged. Can you imagine being the father of a woman that Jagai and Madai raped? This is a real story. It's not a fable for us to think about as a feel-good story. Just imagine being the mother of a daughter that was raped. Imagine that these people killed your son or your daughter, and then the Lord gives them his full mercy. It's traumatizing. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt that somebody wronged you and they kind of got away with it? I've certainly felt that way. I have felt that way many times. And I remember feeling like this huge sense of injustice. How could you do that, Krishna? I know you love me and I know you love that person, but how can you just let this person just get away with treating me that way? I know you care about me. How can you do that? How can you just let them get away with this? What about me, and what about my feelings? And I struggled with that for years. And again, even though I understand and I understood the notion of karma, and I even had like evidence of it, I could see because of certain patterns that, you know, it's very clear that I have karma with this person who has hurt me. But still, I really strongly this sense of struggled with it so much. And then something changed in my life, and it was me. I unintentionally hurt somebody's feelings, and I hurt their feelings really badly. And while it was intentional, it was a situation where I know that I should have known better. Had I been more thoughtful about my behavior, I wouldn't have engaged in that activity that hurt someone's feelings. In the 15th chapter of the Gita, maybe some of you are reading that every day these days because it's the holy month of Purushottam. Please do read it every day if you can during this month. In the 16th verse of that chapter, Krishna says, Ksharaha sarvani bhutani. He says, in the material world, every living entity is fallible. And every living entity means you, and it means me. Do not think that we are above these types of behaviors that can hurt people's feelings. And so again, every time I hear this story, again, growing up and hearing this story so many times, I always hear the speaker say that we are also little Jagai and Madais. We have little Jagai and Madais in our hearts too, and we need to, you know, be aware of them and conquer them and get them out of our hearts and so on. And again, it was kind of like, okay, a nice story going in my ear, but this was the first time that, wow, I saw it. I saw that I can have a little Jagai and Madai in me, and that I too am fallible. And I suppose I never felt of myself that way. So in this lifetime, you know, as devotees, as aspiring devotees, maybe we can consider ourselves to be moral. We can consider ourselves that, you know, we wouldn't hurt anybody. But we've been in the material world since time immemorial. We've been in this world for a long time, and maybe not in these bodies, but we have not always been moral. And if we can reflect on that, then we can see that there might be some evidence of that, maybe in our dreams, maybe in some of our thoughts, maybe even in some of our activities. Do you ever find yourself sometimes thinking that, like, I don't know, wow, that's a really dangerous situation for somebody. If that branch just fell, that person could die. Or just something that maybe you have a thought that you're like, why did I even think that? This is evidence that this is in us somewhere, some kind of samskar somewhere at some point in the whole of time. We weren't always acting morally. And as a society, we don't always talk about that, right? Sometimes we put up a front that, you know, we're the perfect devotee. But again, and maybe we don't always create safe spaces for people to talk about those moments when there is a transgression, when we're not necessarily being the best devotee. But again, please do not think that one day you are not going to be the one who needs forgiveness. Maybe you are today. So earlier on, we meditated on somebody that we needed to forgive. So now, please take a moment and think about someone that you need to beg forgiveness from. So please go deep into your heart and think of a person. And again, if you can't think of someone, you're not going deep enough. Go deeper and think of somebody that you need to ask forgiveness from. And if you're struggling to come up with somebody, Simon Haas, in his book, Yoga and the Dark Night of the Soul, he coins this term. I think he coined it. It might be a common term. Pop psychology. We live in a world where we are told things like, if it doesn't feel good, walk away. Just let it go. You don't have to deal with it. If it doesn't feel good, it's not meant to be in your life. We're told, you know, if it doesn't bring you joy, then get rid of it. We're told to Marie Kondo our lives. But this is all it is. It's pop psychology, and it's nonsense. And it's another material paradigm that Bhakti flips on its head. And again, this is what happened to me. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to stand before the deities and feel genuinely that I am the most fallen person and most undeserving of the Lord's mercy. We read these prayers, and for me, it's always lip service. Like, yes, I am the most fallen, therefore my claim to your mercy is first. And I am, all of these horrible things, and I'm wretched and all these things. I never really understood or meant those prayers. I certainly appreciated them, but I could never relate until this one thing. When I hurt this person, I should say, eventually the forgiveness came. So I feel much better, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But again, before it came, I really understood the feeling of feeling completely raw and vulnerable in front of Krishna and genuinely feeling ashamed and in a feeling of total surrender because I actually just didn't have another choice. And what happened in that situation? I never, ever felt Krishna to be closer than when I came to him fully bare and just showing him my anarthas and begging him to help me get through it. For the first time in my life, I had a glimpse of what it meant for Queen Kunti to pray for more suffering, because I never ever felt Krishna to be so close. That experience was the biggest catalyst in my spiritual life. So of course, I will never feel okay or happy about the fact that I hurt someone. But I also can't regret that experience because it was, again, the biggest catalyst of my spiritual growth. And the way that it was a catalyst for growth is because I had to walk through the fire of shame. I had to ask for forgiveness, and I had to be accountable. So again, thinking about that quote that I read by Bhakti Tirtha Swami about how these insurmountable obstacles can become kind of exciting for a devotee because who knows what the Lord can bring, what kind of adventure might come. This is how suddenly, at least a part of me thinks about reversals. What an exciting opportunity. I would love to feel that close to Krishna again. But again, we're not going to go around seeking these opportunities out. We don't have to seek out opportunities for suffering or to hurt people because we're in the material world and these opportunities are coming to us. And again, we are fallible and we will be the ones who hurt someone. If not already, it's coming. It's going to come. And when it comes, we have to use it as an opportunity and we have to not be afraid to face it. So again, ultimately, I did receive forgiveness. Thank goodness. But yeah, it took some time and a ton of tears and accountability. And again, so much spiritual growth. So during that time when I was struggling with this, I was speaking to my friend Rasanath, who many of you know here in New York. And he said something that really resonated with me. He said, we were talking about how this is an opportunity for spiritual growth and just speaking about our realizations about this. And he said that it's funny, when you're in the position to be the forgiver, so when you're in the position to give forgiveness to someone, it's accompanied with a sense of moral superiority. I could never do that to someone. I would never do that. And okay, I will be the bigger person and I will forgive you. But when you need to be forgiven for something, any sense of entitlement or moral superiority goes right out the window. And that is when we need Krishna's grace. That is when we need Krishna's mercy. So when you think back to those people, those experiences where you think to yourself, like, how could Krishna just let that person get away with hurting me the way that he did or the way that she did? How could Krishna give his mercy? Where is the justice? So while we're struggling to figure out why Krishna is merciful and not just rather, he's not giving justice to the people who hurt us, just remember that there will be a time when we're in that need of that mercy as well. Radha Swami says that mercy doesn't concede to the principles of justice. And one day we will need his mercy. We will need Krishna's mercy, even if it's not just. And my husband said this once in a class. He said that we love Krishna because he's merciful, not because he's just. So this is a really kind of big realization for me and why this topic was important for me to share. So a couple of small exercises to end off with, maybe another 5 or 10 minutes or so, and then we can open it to some Q&A or reflections. So first, please think about that person that you were thinking of before, about the person that you need to forgive. So just take a second, meditate on that person, meditate on the situation, and think to yourself, did I have any fault in this situation? Is there any way that I can have empathy for the offender? What if I put myself in that person's shoes? Would I see suffering? Would I see pain the same way that Lord Nityananda was able to see that in Jagai and Madai? Does the offender have any good qualities that maybe Krishna sees in them or other people can see in them? Maybe you even see in them. Because of that situation where, you're trying to forgive this person, something really bad happened, was there any silver linings that came out of it? And also think about how, if at all, does it benefit me to hold on to this grudge? Now that said, it's really important to note that forgiveness doesn't mean that somebody can use and abuse you at any time and get away with it. Of course not. And it doesn't mean that what the person did is okay. Of course not. It means that you're making a choice not to let your grudge take a hold of you and your life, not to allow it to snatch you out of soul consciousness and bind you deeper and deeper into bodily consciousness. And remember also that you're potentially liberating another person from guilt and therefore helping them in their own spiritual path. Okay, so please think about that. And then secondly, now think about the person that you offended and that you need to beg forgiveness from. So again, go deep into your hearts and let's come up with a plan to ask for that person's forgiveness. And just know that this is integral to our spiritual life. Whether or not the forgiveness comes, just asking for forgiveness goes a very long way in Krishna's eyes, especially if this person is a devotee. And once again, you don't want to leave your body with a grudge or with somebody having a grudge against you. It's in our best interest to try to sort these things out now. And again, our scriptures always tell us that, death can come at any moment. It's not that there's always time to sort these things out. The time is now. So please learn from my experience of having to ask for forgiveness that this can be an opportunity for tremendous growth if we can, one, take ownership and responsibility for our role in this conflict, if there was some, usually there is. Stay accountable to authorities, and I'm sorry, there is, because we're talking about begging forgiveness from people for something that we might have done. So please take ownership and responsibility. Stay accountable to some kind of authority that can, again, hold you to it, hold you to asking for forgiveness, hold you to improving whatever you need to improve in your heart. And then come up with a plan to ask for forgiveness. And in the Japa retreat, I remember learning that if you can't ask in person, because sometimes it's just too hard, then perhaps consider writing a letter. And if you're in a situation where for some reason you just can't reveal to the person that you hurt, that it was you who hurt them, or that you have some role in their suffering, then in the Japa retreat we learned, then be of service to that person. In one way or another, however you can, try to serve that person. Be patient and willing to wait for the forgiveness to come. That person also has to go through their journey. And if they're a devotee, then they'll know, hopefully, they'll come around and understand that to give forgiveness is also in their best interest for their spiritual life. And finally, pray. Don't underestimate the power of prayer. Super Soul knows your heart, your intention, and he also knows the intention and the heart of the person from whom you need forgiveness. So pray to him that this person could kindly find it in their hearts to forgive you. Don't miss out on the opportunity to grow in your spiritual life. Don't adhere to the principles of pop psychology and just let it go because it doesn't feel good or because it makes you too afraid to confront yourself. There is joy that will come out of this in the end. So please think of the people, as a little takeaway, think of the people that you need to forgive and also the ones that you need to get forgiveness from. And really pray from your heart and come up with some kind of a plan to sort this out before we leave our bodies, before it's too late. So that was all that I had prepared. I genuinely thought that was going to be a little longer than 40 minutes. And so please don't ask me any difficult questions, but maybe we can open it up for some questions and reflections.
Thank you very much, Radha Bhakti. This is a very deep subject, and I think it touches everyone's heart. I don't think anybody has lived any number of years without having to think about this, without having to deal with it on a personal, individual level. And certainly when we are embarking upon any kind of spiritual path, this whole notion of unburdening ourselves, not just of our external weight, but also the internal heavy weight that we carry in our inability to forgive, and so on. So this is certainly a deep topic, and it warrants a lot of wonderful discussion like you did. I really, really appreciate all the points you brought up, especially linking it with Shastra and how the Lord's essence is really forgiveness, and how, the beauty of a Brahmana is for forgiveness and so on. So I have a question. You did say don't ask any hard ones.
Please.
But this is a hard one for me.
Okay.
On an individual level, forgiveness, I can find myself forgiving, it's not that difficult for me, I think. Although sometimes it takes me a year or 2 or 5 to get it, but I think I can do it. However, things can get very complicated when now there are 2 people who are living as one. I'm talking about, married couples and so forth. And so now that complicates it infinitely, because if someone has offended, say, my wife, and she wants to forgive that person very easily, but I do not, then that becomes very difficult. Or if someone has offended me and I want to forgive that person, but she doesn't, she's very upset. Or alternatively, if someone has offended me, right, and I don't forgive that fellow, but she forgives him, then I get angry at her. Hey, how can you forgive him? Don't you know what he did to me? How dare? And then that becomes another fight. So the whole forgiveness gets extremely complicated when you have this combination permutation, especially when you're 2 people trying to live as one. It's hard enough to just forgive each other, and then you have to deal with this. So maybe if you would like to comment on that, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you. And
see, Hari Prasad Prabhu is nodding. Yes, good question.
So firstly, I resonate with everything that you said. And it's a natural quality of a devotee. And even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited that in this pastime with Jagai and Madai, that, he said, and Krishna says, in this pastime, Mahaprabhu says, well, Putana offended me, but you've offended my devotee. So it's natural for us to feel more angry on behalf of our loved ones if somebody has offended them. And so again, it's integral for the person who was offended to provide forgiveness. And at that point, it behooves us to also find it in our hearts to find forgiveness for the person as well. Now, once again, forgiveness doesn't mean that we forget, right? So if you can somehow find it in your heart to forgive the person who potentially has offended your wife, but again, you learn from the experience and you potentially don't associate in the same way that you used to, or you learn, how to avoid that situation in the future, then that's still a growth experience. But ultimately, it's always in our best interest to forgive. And I have also been in the situation where somebody hurt me, and then my sister was talking to them and shaking their hand and saying, how's it going? And I remember I got so mad at her, like, why are you even talking to this person? How could you even, after what they did, how can you even say hello to that person? And so I understand that. That's a very human emotion. But again, ultimately, we're just hurting ourselves. So Bhakti Tirtha Swami talks about how when we are unable to forgive, it's like we're holding 2 burning hot pieces of coal in our hands, waiting for the opportunity to just throw it at the person that we're mad at. And so we're just waiting for the opportunity. But what happens while we're waiting is our hands are getting burned, right? And then there's that expression, I don't know who said this originally, that holding on to a grudge and holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time, it behooves us to, again, find it in our hearts to be forgiving, because if nothing else, it's for our own benefit, for our own advancement in Krishna consciousness, and that is what's pleasing to Krishna. The other thing I would say is, in all situations, whether it's a unit, whether it's two people or one person, let's always think about the intention and the consciousness of the person. That's always, easier to forgive when we see that somebody maybe unintentionally hurt us. So that's something else to try to meditate on. And nobody said it was easy. But also, just try to find it in your heart. And if you struggle with it, I always suggest talking it out with a mentor or a senior devotee or your guru to kind of help you through that process. I would like to throw that question back to you, Madan Gopal Prabhu, and any other senior devotees that are on the call. What would you add to that? Because I know you're so kind to ask a question, but I know you probably have something in mind as well. So please, what else would you add to that?
No, thank you very much. I think I liked your examples of the coal and the poison. And sometimes these difficult situations are actually opportunities to become even deeper friends with your partner. When you go through something very difficult where you're trying to work out how the other person can forgive when you have forgiven, but they cannot. And then if you can somehow coax it out of that person, it deepens our relationship. And so it behooves us to look for pathways out of the quagmires of our inability to forgive, I think. And situations are complicated sometimes, but we have to keep working at it. It's important to remember that reminder. So thank you very much. Thank you so much for that. Yashoda Dulal Prabhu had a comment to make, followed by a question from Guru Das Prabhu. Go ahead, Yashoda Dulal Prabhu.
Thank you, Madan Gopal Prabhu. So first of all, thank you, Radha Bhakti. That was really, really nice. And welcome to Harisad Prabhu, your husband, and George, his father. Zippy was there too, his mother, but I see she's listening elsewhere right now. So my comment was this, in today's political environment, especially, many of us as devotees, and I struggle with this myself, many of us as devotees might be very careful about not offending other devotees and so on. But, the politicians, and in particular, a politician of the party that we don't support might be fair game for being offensive about. And then that then extends, and I've seen this, I stay out of these kind of debates, but I've seen this on social media where devotees who either support this side or that side jump in and start offending each other, like fighting like cats and dogs. And my comment was twofold. One is we see in Shastra that, like, for example, Dhruva's stepmother, she received the reaction for offending Dhruva even before he became the pure devotee that he became. So we really need to be careful about offend people. Say, this person's not a devotee, they're just a demoniac politician, or the devotee supporting that demoniac politician must be demoniac themselves. And I think it's a real danger that we let ourselves into. And like I said, I struggle with it myself because I have strong feelings. I think in this country especially, everyone has strong feelings one way or the other about what's happening politically. And it's something that as devotees, we really need to watch out for.
Thank you so much for saying that comment. And you're preaching to the choir about, you're talking to a Canadian about the political atmosphere in this country. I get it. It brings up something else that I heard. I think it was Bhakti Tirtha Swami in the class that I was listening to in preparation for this one. He talks about how forgiveness is a divine quality, but forgiveness and compassion doesn't mean that we always have to be diplomatic. Sometimes you have to be straightforward and tell a person how it is. I'm speaking in general, not necessarily about the politics of the world today. Sometimes we have to be straight, and sometimes a straightforward statement can be a little cutting, even if that's not our intention. But Brahmins and Kshatriyas and you know, anybody who's trying to be a noble person, it's not about sparing feelings, it's about doing what's right. And he talks about how in Vedic civilization, when somebody commits a crime, they should be punished. In fact, they must be punished. A, because it's good for them so that they don't have to come back into a different life and suffer the consequences. But B, we do need to prevent them from doing it again. It's artificial to say, oh, Prabhu, you should just forgive this person because, you know, he's also a spirit soul. While that might be true on one level, that doesn't mean that we don't need to have repercussions for behavior. And again, that is Vedic. As it relates to, you know, the political debates that we see going on, I hear you. There are times when I'm just like, I'm tempted to engage, but I don't. And I think if we ever do want to engage, one, Vaisheshika Prabhu makes this a part of his initiation vows. When he initiates people, he says, follow these 4 regulative principles and chant 16 rounds. And he always says, and he makes his disciples repeat, do not criticize anyone on the internet, because our words live there forever. Maybe your stance will change one day. And so, you know, that's just one other point that I wanted to add. And also, if there is something that somebody is doing in the political arena or elsewhere that is flat out wrong, it's okay to talk about that. But I think we have to do it in a way where we're backed by Shastra. So it's not like one person's opinion versus another. And we have to always do it in a respectful way, because it is a spirit soul that you're talking to. And 9 times out of 10, you know, it can get heated because of our opinions. So as long as we're backed by Shastra and we can speak rationally and logically, that's actually when we can create change as well. Otherwise, it's just mode of passion that's introducing mode of passion results as well. But thank you so much, because that was so relevant. And as I was preparing this talk, I was thinking that as well. Like, what if somebody asks a question if we have to like forgive some of the heinous things that are happening today? We see the Jagais and the Madais today. So thank you very much. And I'll do the same thing to you. You are so senior. And I've just seen that Apurva and Kamalini Prabhus are here as well. And I don't know if there are any other senior devotees, but my obeisances, and please, if there's anything you'd like to add, please do.
Jay Advaita Swami Maharaj is also here.
Oh no, oh Maharaj, please accept my obeisances. It's so terrifying to give a class in front of you. Thank you for being here. And please, please interject if you have any corrections or any additions.
My apologies for being terrifying. For Yashodhadulal Prabhu's comment, I think the problem is not that we criticize politicians on the internet, but that we're not even-minded about it. We say that this one's a dog or that one's a dog, and we forget that they're all dogs.
Mm.
They're all vile. That evens things up, you know. It's not that I'm against your candidate or the other candidate. They're all dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. Fight with that.
Thank you, Maharaj. Any other corrections or comments on this topic of forgiveness?
One thought that came to my mind, Mataji, you mentioned that sometimes it's helpful to think about, you know, what's going on with the person who's wronged us or whatever. Sometimes I find it helpful to forget about what might be going on in the mind of the person who's wronged us, what his motive might be, his, you know, thinking might be. That think about. We may not think it's all that wonderful. Let it just go.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Maharaj. Kamalini Prabhu, I see. Are you trying to?
Yes. Not just saying hello. So nice to see you. Anyway, this was really powerful and painful. Like you say, it's not one of those feel-good kind of presentations, warm and fuzzy. Because you know what, I really liked one point, especially where you said, put yourself in their shoes. You know, like if someone has hurt us or offended us, think, well, what are they committed to? You know, that because usually what they're committed to is a good thing, righteous, and also seeing they also have many good qualities. And devotees, Krishna loves his devotees. But I kind of had this experience that I think I really do need to forgive and ask forgiveness, but forgive. But like you say, it's kind of like I have evidence. I have evidence where why I can feel bad about them or find fault or see their bad qualities. And then what happens, like in the past, I've thought I should really like confront them, or on the other hand, like you say, I should apologize. And then what happens is over time, I mean, 6 months, a year, 2 years, then I say, oh, now I don't feel that anymore. Maybe it went away. But like you're saying, it doesn't go away. We can bury it, right? Bury the, like ourselves not asking for forgiveness and thinking, well, they forgot about it and they didn't even know really what they didn't maybe even take offense, although it was offensive, or we may have spoken ill of others. So that's like that is my question. I think you were saying that it needs to be dealt with, even if it no longer feels painful. We're no longer feeling that pinch, like I did something wrong, like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we just have to be introspective. Am I not offended anymore because I've matured and maybe I'm genuinely not offended, or am I repressing something? And so I think that's the question we have to ask ourselves. Go ahead.
On both sides, yeah. As far as being offended, like I've experienced, I can get over it philosophically. I think, oh, I'm over that now. And then something will trigger it where again, I feel the same base, un-Vaishnava feelings towards them. And I say, gosh, I thought I was over this. I thought I was forgiving and I was really seeing their good qualities and, not carrying it. But then it will surface again. So anyway, it's really, I hope that you will speak again before too long.
Can you give any coaching on that?
Yeah, but oh yeah, so coaching. My husband said give some coaching, how it's still there, even if after a year or two we don't really feel that it's there until
give some insight into finding out there, even if we feel like we've let it go.
Yeah, and how we still have to deal with it, like that. It doesn't exactly just disappear. Of course, we could become purified through the process of Krishna consciousness and then actually do, become purified and not hold that grudge and everything. But yeah.
I think I can give a little reflection from my life. And then if it's okay, Maharaj, if you don't mind also providing some wisdom on this. Just from my personal experience, when I think back of my life, I can think of at least 2 or 3 standout events in my life that make me realize that this is something that I would have to come back for. I would have to repay this debt or ask forgiveness of this person or be forgiven by that person. And that kind of just doing that check every once in a while and thinking about if it's in your consciousness, if you're able to reflect, then that's probably something that we need to take care of. So that's one point. And then I think we do know, again, if we just try to go deeper into our hearts and past all of the pop psychology, I think we do know where there is anger. and where we're feeling some kind of a grudge. And I'll just share one quick thing that my husband actually taught me, and then Maharaj, please, I would love for you to share. Just in case this is helpful as it relates to holding grudges. There was a time that I was really struggling with holding a grudge with somebody, and I was speaking to my husband about it. And he said that it was such a powerful visualization. He said, just imagine that your life is a stage and we're all actors on this stage in this material world. And he said, at the time that you leave your body, imagine that the curtains roll up, the curtains, whatever, come up, and all of the people who hurt you are standing behind the curtain as characters in the play of your life, smiling at you and clapping for you because you made it. And they're saying to you, and it's such a powerful visual, actually visualize those people who betrayed you. And they're looking at you with love because they're saying to you, I was just an instrument to get you here, and clapping for you that you made it. So when I thought about that, I thought, who are the characters that I should visualize doing that? And that helped me identify, like, okay, these are the grudges that I need to let go of, or the people that I think could be behind that curtain. And I know we're at time. Jay Dwaita Maharaj, is there anything that you can add to that?
Well, I think not directly to that visualization exercise, but certainly to the truth of the principles that you stated in Bhagavad Gita. This is a quality of a devotee: kshama, forgiveness, and tulya, in even-mindedness. So he doesn't put anyone into difficulty, and no one puts him into difficulty, because his mind is steady. And certainly one's mind does become, you lose your balance when generally we tend to obsess on we feel offended, and then we obsess on what's wrong with the other person, and how terrible and how heartless and how ungrateful, and so on and so on and so on. And then we're the loser. We lose our equanimity of mind. We lose our spiritual vision. We forget about Krishna, and we become the center of the play. So I think all of your points are germane. The whole topic is certainly worthwhile. So,
Thank you very much, Maharaj. One more last question that we wanted to go. Guru Das Prabhu had asked. Guru Das Prabhu, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Well, thank you for your presentation, Mataji. It's a very multi-layered topic, and I feel very unqualified to address it, but of course, subject to desires for forgiveness, like everyone else. So I wrote a hypothetical in the chat, and I'll just read it because I don't want to fumble over my own words. The hypothetical is: I offend someone and I want forgiveness. A devotee. I try plan A, plan B, plan C. They just don't seem to care about appeasing my guilt. I turn to Krishna for help, asking him to soften the devotee's heart. What do I do when the other party, whom I badly want forgiveness from, simply refuses to give it? And I can't just say it was a hypothetical. It's not something that's bothering me now, but in my past I can remember.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. It's not in your control if somebody else will give you forgiveness. The only thing that we can control is our endeavor, our level of prayer, but ultimately it's up to that person. And so personally, I've learned to make it my philosophy that, as long as I can say that I've done everything that I could, then I pray that Krishna is okay with that. So as long as you can say that you did everything that you could, I think that Krishna is also very forgiving once again. But that was just kind of an anecdotal response based on my experience. If Maharaj or Apurva or Kamalini Prabhus have anything to add, please do.
And remember, it's just a hypothetical question.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Yashoda Dalal Prabhu, Madan Gopal Prabhu, would you like to add to that? Hari Prasad.
Yes, thank you. So we're almost out of time, but I just wanted to add, there was a very nice seminar on forgiveness given by Radhika Raman Prabhu. And there's a multi-day seminar on just this topic, and it really goes in depth. And one of the days was focused on the standard of forgiveness for someone who has been offended, and standard of forgiveness of how to ask for forgiveness when we have offended somebody. And so if somebody asks us for forgiveness, we should be the most lenient and most eager to give the forgiveness. And then when it comes, even if a little bit of like they ask for forgiveness, even not sincerely, but we should just let everything go. Just with this, even a symbolic asking for forgiveness. On the other hand, we should do exactly what you said, everything within our power, bowing down, touching their lotus feet, expressing our remorse with tears, whatever way we can express it, all the sincerity at our command. And then we'll leave it up to the Lord, because then the Lord in that other devotee's heart has to deal with that. Because if you can't do more than what you can't do, no, you're right, what you can't do. So I think it's basically what you said. But thank you very much. So we are running out of time. However, we have Sri Radhika on the line, and she has a quick comment, and we would like to hear that. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Radha Bas Prabhu, who asked the question about if, if it's sometimes not possible for whatever reason to ask the devotee for forgiveness, or you are not given forgiveness for certain things you've done. It's a good attitude to adopt and humility to serve other devotees. In a community, to extend yourself in such a way that you can serve others, and that way kind of like how to say, like look for forgiveness or repay something, by serving others, in a humble attitude, by helping others overcoming their difficulties. That's what something you are doing with your lectures as well, fixing the minds of others. So yeah, I just wanted to add this little thing, just to extending yourself in this circle and just humbly serving others,
That's very interesting. That sounds like, and this is not a criticism. It sounds like I commit a crime and I go to prison, and in prison, I do some reformatory activity and become a very good person. And then when I get out of prison, somehow I want the stigma removed that put me in prison because I'm such a good man now. What do you say to that?
Well, I think the point is, you've tried in your hypothetical example, Gurudas, you've tried to do everything you could to seek forgiveness from that actual person.
Yeah.
It's when it's not worked that goes about.
Yeah.
And the advice is very good, because we don't want to stay in the prison of our being unforgiven.
Thank you very much, Sri Radhika. And thank you very much, Gurudas Prabhu, for your question. And certainly we are very grateful for Radha Bhakti to give her valuable time and her deep insights on this very, very important topic. So if I'd like to request devotees to hold on just one more minute, I have upcoming announcements, and then we can open it up. So Pathways to Perfection series of the 9 process of devotion. This is hosted by the Bhakti Center, so please make a note to join this on Saturday mornings, 9 a.m. to 10:30. So we have quite a few more sessions left to go. This coming Saturday, Shri Prahlad Prabhu will be taking us through the process of Kirtanam, and then followed by that we'll have Vishnu Smaranam and so on. So if you can see the slate of excellent speakers lined up here, so do not miss this event. Then we have the personal finance planning seminar, which is a wonderful seminar put together by Vamshidhari Gopal Prabhu on how we can retire or create a financially stable future for us and give more of our time, energy, and years to Krishna's service without having to stress too much about our financial situation. So there's 2 more sessions left. This is next 2 Sundays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on this URL, tinyurl.com, ISKCON NJ seminar. And of course, we've had our Zoom channel. Today is Thursday, and we have this program on this channel every day except for Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, we have His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj taking us through the 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we had Radha Bhakti Devi Dasi. And on Sunday, we have Rajabihari Prabhu. So please do not miss this program. We hope to see you all, and feel free to share this. You can go to our website, iskonofnewjersey.org, and please share these links with all your friends, and they'll be appreciated. And thank you once again. You can feel free to unmute yourself and say a quick Hari Bol to our wonderful speaker and all the great guests that we've had. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Radha Bhakti. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you
Hari
so much.
Bol.
Hare Krishna, Dandavad, Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Dandavad.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.
Nice to see you. Hari Bol.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Very amazing. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dandavad.
Thank you.
So
Very amazing.
beautiful.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hari Bol, Auntie. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Very amazing.
beautiful.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you.
Hari Bol, Auntie. Thank you.
Thank you, Radha Bhakti. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Uncle Hari Bol.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Radha Bhakti. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Uncle Hari Bol.
Radhe Radhe, Hari Bol.
Radhe Sham.
Thank you, Radha Bhakti.
Thank you, Uncle Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.